Before we get started, I want to thank my professors that helped me through this project, Professor Jade Hoyer and Professor Sandra Lane, as well as my classmates in thesis class and everyone I painted for this project. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to do this, so thank you so much. And hello, my name is Tessa. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, but lately I've mostly been working in different forms of painting, as well as textiles. The last few months I've been working on this project, and I'm so excited to share it with you today. This is the work I'll be talking about today. It's titled, What Does an Education Look Like? And is approximately 10 by 8 feet. I created it because I felt a need to make an alternative documentation to my college experience. Transcripts are really great at showing what you learn in classes, but I learned so much outside of classes that I wanted to express that in some way. With this installation, I'm able to represent experiences like working in food service, spending time with my family, and traveling. To me, these experiences are just as valid as taking a 3-credit class. Before I talk more about my work, let me tell you about what my education has looked like during the last 6 years. I've been learning through a mix of community college, universities, and study abroad programs, and before that, I was unschooled. And I know that I'm not alone. I think a lot of people today are experiencing college differently. It's becoming more rare for individuals to go to a 4-year school and spend 4 years there and then be done with school. So let me share with you what these different experiences has meant to me. And unschooling is kind of the background of how I understand education. It's about learning through interest-based exploration. There's no testing, there's no grades. Everything is based around what you're interested in and what you want to learn. Authors that are really influential in this education type are John Taylor Gatto, Grace Llewellyn, and Blake Bowles. And each of these authors heavily influenced my family's choice to unschool. But you may be skeptical that anyone left to their own devices would spend time studying. But I assure you they do. Lots of people across the country are using unschooling as their educational philosophy and succeeding. Some people do it because their kids don't fit in traditional school. Others like the culture of unschooling, and maybe they have kids that are super passionate about an obscure topic. This is an image of one of my friends when I was unschooling who was really passionate about poetry. So he went to school part-time and unschooled the rest of the time, writing and reading poetry. I didn't fit in traditional school as a young person because I learned to read really late, so unschooling was a much better fit for me. This is what unschooling felt like to me. It was incredibly empowering and freeing. This is an image from a trip I took with a group of unschoolers to Argentina. And unschooling taught me how every experience can be an opportunity to learn something, and it made me take responsibility for my education. From unschooling, I went to community colleges and then on to universities. Community college is becoming a common trend for people to start their college experience. I found a Pew Research study that showed enrollment increasing since 1940, with spikes especially during times of economic trouble in the U.S., just because it's such an affordable way to go to school. I was really surprised how quickly I went from unschooling to institutional learning, but it was a pretty smooth transition. After community college, I became a Metropolitan State University at Denver student, and I immediately did a study abroad program to Morocco. Doing study abroad programs is another trend that college students are taking more advantage of in recent times. I had traveled before, but with the increased opportunity for programs and scholarships, I was able to explore the world even more. Where I found college somewhat restricting, Study abroad programs were more experience-focused. Through semester at sea, I got to attend 3 different homestays in Morocco, Ghana, and Costa Rica. These programs weren't for credit, but spending time with these families immersed in the culture, I learned so much more than I could in any classroom. So I'm graduating this semester after 6 years of college. I have attended 4 different schools and visited 18 different countries during that time, yet my degree will just say I graduated with a degree in art. With this project, I convey my full experience using portraiture and mapping the connections of people I know and people that know each other. As I explore this topic, I discovered a theory by Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari related to a botanical term, rhizomes. I was excited by its ability to explain how I understand education, and I decided to use it in this project. In their words, a rhizome ceaselessly establishes connections between somatic chains, organizations of power, and circumstances related to the arts, sciences, and social struggles. The theory is found in the book 1,000 Plateaus and was written in 1987. The book compares crabgrass to how relationships, time, and capitalism function, and it also applies to education really well. They talk about everything not being structured like a tree with one starting point with branches coming off of it, but much more non-hierarchical with everything connected to each other. Crabgrass uses rhizomes, like aspen trees and most ground covers. These plants can look like separate entities on the surface, but if you dig them up or look underground, you'll see that they are connected by the same root structure. To Deleuze and Guattari, everything is crabgrass, connected to everything else, whether we realize it or not. In their theory, they connect different areas of study. They talk about science and literature and linguistics all together. They specifically talk about Jack Kerouac and jazz music as ways to understand their theory. The way they talk about different areas of study together reminds me of how I used to think about education when I was unschooling. At that time, I didn't have separate classes for things. Science, literature, and everything else was combined as I discovered things that I was interested in. So when I read a cookbook, that was science, that was home ec, that could be potentially history or art. So reading this theory was exciting because it articulated that kind of learning using crabgrass as a metaphor. It really helped me understand how I see education. So who were these crazy guys? They were both professors at the University of Paris. Other faculty at that time included Michel Foucault and Jacques Lacan. Before teaming up, Deleuze was writing about Nietzsche and Kant, and Guattari was in his family's pharmaceutical business before he started psychology and then did more philosophy writing. So from their different backgrounds, they were able to bring a mix of knowledge together to create their theory. I use the theory in essence in my work, but I don't relate to everything that they talk about in their theory. They talk about Marxism and Freudian ideas, and those things have no place in what my project is about. I'm mostly interested in how they describe connections. This is an image of me creating the connections with string behind my portraits. It was really interesting to see how many people were connected to other people I knew when I was mapping these connections. Learning can be supported with structure, but it's an organic process that happens no matter the environment you're in. Wherever I was during the last 6 years, I was learning. Learning happens from connections, from the people you meet and the environment that you exist in. This is an image of my friend's son. A few years ago, I spent a week helping them move, and he taught me about the joy of summer mud and bubble machines. This is a part of my education. What I learned helping take care of him will certainly inform later experiences in my life. In the installation, each string connects to people that know each other and that were impactful to me in my education. It becomes a root system, a rhizome that connects all the experiences I had into one visual representation. But as you look at this, you may notice that people are really an important part of what this project is. Here are a few images of those individuals and people that I chose to paint, because for there to be education, there does need to be people that educate. These are some of the people that educated me, and they include coworkers, professors, family members, and friends. With portraitures, I was able to bring all the people into one space visually and incorporate aesthetics of memory. I wanted them to look similar to underscore the fact that each of them have been equally important to me regardless of the situation I was learning from them. Shearer West wrote, "Portraiture can be considered an object, but they can equally be seen as substitutes for the individuals they represent." And that's the kind of presence I was looking for, creating these images of people that were impactful to me. I wanted them to feel like they were in the space. The aspects of memory in my work come from Deleuze and Guattari's theory. They write about history not as a timeline, but as something much more fluid and present. I relate that to education a lot because as I learn things from individuals, it's constantly evolving as I learn more. I wanted to include aesthetics of memory, so I made my renderings faded, I used ambiguous space, and I spread my images across the wall in my installation to create not a timeline, but something much more close to what Guattari and Deleuze were speaking about. 3 artists that capture memory in their work are Ali Kavanagh, William Kittredge, and Lee Song Song, and each of them greatly influenced how I crafted my installation. Kavanagh's work is not meant to represent memory, but her use of color and ambiguous space really evokes a sense of loss that I connect to memory. In this painting, Rush Float Hush, the figure is set against this mostly white background. The space she exists in is nondescript. The color palette and background express the sense of missing pieces. There is no way of knowing who she is, where she is, what time she exists in. She is completely out of context, so she becomes like a memory only partially recalled. Kavanagh's work has greatly inspired me to work in watercolor and experiment with ambiguous space to evoke this sense of memory in my work. William Kittredge uses erased lines and repetition to speak about memory in his work. He uses stop-motion animation by erasing and then redrawing scenes on the same surface. In this image, you can see a ghosting effect left by the trees on the left side. I left my sketch lines to incorporate this look in my work. His work speaks to how memories fade and change over time. Lee Song Song is another artist who, like Kittredge, makes art directly related to memory. He paints historical scenes of China in oils. These are usually segmented into different blocks of color palettes, and he uses very thick paint to obscure the images. I used arbitrary color as well, and spread my images across the wall to incorporate similar aesthetics that he uses. Portraiture was a great genre to use for this project because it was able to both honor the specific people that were part of my education as well as express how they exist in my memory. Here are the materials I used for my project. They include watercolor paper mounted on plywood, cream-colored string, and a cool color palette. They work together to express a rhizomic educational experience. I use very simple materials to express my ideas as clearly as possible. When I was picking the people that I would paint for this project, I made a list of 100 individuals that I had vivid memory with in relation to education. and then I selected about half to realize in watercolor. Each of these people have stories that are important to me, and they include my very first art professor, who taught me how to paint with oil colors and pushed me to work really hard. My friend that I traveled around the world with. She taught me to be more open-minded about other people's values and to think about my own as well. And my brother, who has been my friend my whole life and has taught me to persevere. This project is a portrait of all the experiences I have had in college, and by extension it becomes a portrait of me. Each individual seen here has had a hand in who I am today. So this is what my education looks like. The project connects unschooling, formal education, and the theory of rhizomes into one piece. Learning is an act of exploration and an act of human connection. That is what this project is about, and that is what I hope you see when you look at it. Thank you so much for watching this video and spending this time with me.